Hello. So I'm here to talk about my response to this week's material in the movie Crip Camp. I enjoyed watching this movie. It gave me joy to see those interviews with the people who were involved in this movement, seeing the happiness and also the fight and determination in their faces. Um, in my opinion, I think the film's most important key message was simply that individuals with disabilities have value, just like you and I, when they started off by showing interviews of them and their time at Camp Gen Ed, showing that they could be teens, just like any other teens at a summer camp, with romances and finding the love of their lives and swearing and smoking and games and fun and music. They said it even felt like Woodstock. Um, and then it also showed their value within society as they got older and turning into activists for their movement, um, showing that they could ultimately change the world. Um, they were trying to convey that in this movie, they were trying to convey that people with disabilities deserve rights just like everyone else and that they're capable of standing up for themselves when things aren't right just like for everyone else and they can make the change. um, One of the most compelling characters in this film I thought was Judy. She seemed to be the heavy hitter in this documentary. She seemed to be the main character in this movement, the spark that lit the fire. She started with creating the Disabled in Action group that grew into such a larger movement. She spoke for those who couldn't. She publicly put into words everything that people like her were feeling. She was putting a voice to those that couldn't do it for themselves. She was standing up for them, which was a first in this time. The disability culture at the camp seemed surprising for this time, because, like they had mentioned, there were horrible institutions still functioning at this time. They had shown Willowbrook and the saddening photos and videos that were taken of the treatment of the people with disabilities residing there. So places like this still um, were still going on at this time while this camp was also going on. So we see some polar opposites in the way that people were being treated. But this culture that I speak of was beautiful at the camp. Everyone felt like they were at home between the campers and the counselors. There was a sense of belongingness that permeated the camp. No one had felt judged. They were treated just like any other teens, like at this normal feeling summer camp with music and friends and fun. And they had mentioned they just got to feel like teens. Teens got to feel like teens. Inclusiveness was just natural for them. Everyone was accepted just how they were. They understood the struggles of having a disability and simply it just came natural to them to express patience and understanding and willingness to help. They had mentioned that everyone helped everyone, no matter the size of the task, whether it was helping them to simply walk or giving them a bath. They didn't have to feel shameful of their disability because everyone was on the same wavelength. Um, I think the legal processes was so challenging in terms of securing civil rights for individuals with disabilities because people still had stigmas against people with disabilities at this time. One lady had mentioned, and it stuck with me, that it wasn't until people changed their attitudes that these laws that they were passing would actually mean anything. So those mindsets were going to take some time to change, whether the laws were there or not. Um, People had lived that way for such a long time, viewing these people as different, and that was going to take some time to change. Looking at the community aspect of the challenging part was that businesses had to spend money to implement the accessibility, which caused some pushback in that sense. Um, it seems to be, based on my understanding, that there's a messy intersection between the courts and legal processes, the laws, and social justice. So, first, the social injustice occurred, thus being the mistreatment of people with disabilities. After some fight back within that community towards the government, laws could be passed. But then the enforcement was the issue. This was where the courts and legal processes came into play, just like when there was no enactment of the 504 when it was first signed, and the big movement started, and in San Francisco to push for the policies to be followed through. But then succession in these movements eventually, and legal processes that arose because of them, led to the enactment of enforcement laws, which ultimately led to some social justice. And I say some social justice because this almost seems like a cycle. Court cases will continue to arise based on differing interpretations or following throughs of the laws. The laws will continue to change and evolve as time goes on, which in all I think is a good thing, showing that fighting against social injustices, just like shown in this movie, really can change our world. So, thank you for listening to me.